Okay, after the listening evaluation, we will continue with the topic money systems. We will finish the gold standard, and then we will talk about other scripts and alternative money systems. First of all, the listening task: what makes a currency stable? Question number one. According to Steve Keen, what makes a currency stable?
He said that positive balance of trade is the key factor to make the currency stable.
Yes.
And also he mentioned volumes of trade. With the higher volumes, there is more stability.
Okay. He also said that some economists believe that it's the public or private debt to GDP ratio. It's in fact empirically it's rather the balance of trade. How is the equilibrium exchange rate being achieved? According to Milton Friedman, what's the train of thought?
Is it that the balances should be zero, but it only works in a static world, not for a growing economy?
Yes, but how does it happen? How does it equilibrate?
You don't have restrictions on trading.
No, there is a market mechanism for equilibrating the exchange rate and the balance of trade. According to Friedman,
supply and demand.
yes, but could you evaluate on that, or could you be more specific, please?
Could it be money supply and interest rates?
Okay, so I will just tell you. If there is a trade deficit, it means that the demand for a foreign currency increases because people want to buy more foreign goods. That's what it means, that there is a trade deficit. And because the demand increases, so does the exchange rate. And the weaker currency can buy less imported goods, and that clears the trade deficit automatically. It's quite simple, quite straightforward. So there is an intrinsic mechanism of checks and balances that when your goods are cheap, they're competitive. Because they are cheap, you have this competitive advantage. People will buy it, but because people will buy it, they will become dearer, and the balance of trade equilibrates or goes to zero, balances itself. Does it make sense? It's quite straightforward. It absolutely makes sense, I would say. What do you think? Or what does Steve Keen think? Hmm? Steve Keen says that empirically, we've had floating exchange rate for 40 years, and we still have enormous trade imbalances. So even though the theory makes sense on paper, because Milton Friedman published it in the 70s or something, so on the paper it might make sense, but in reality, there is no real tendency, no trend for balancing the international trade. There are still enormous trade imbalances. Some countries are notorious debtors, like the United States. Some countries are notorious creditors, like China or Germany. So there must be a flaw somewhere. Or there must be more degrees of freedom. An easy one. What is a dirty float?
Managed load change system.
Yes, it's like a managed free floating, meaning that the central bank can intervene in order to stabilize the exchange rate or move it. Mhm. What makes Japanese yen and Swiss franc stable?
Positive balance of trade of current account.
And how is it achieved?
But they export a lot. They sell a lot of goods to other countries.
Yes. So, in effect, the current account surplus creates demand for the currency. That's how it works. Yes, thank you. How does a country achieve the trade surplus? What type of advantage can they have so that they are able to export a lot?
They need to export more than they import, and that's usually done by having a lower exchange rate, so depreciate your exchange. Then your goods are cheaper in comparison to
So yes, you can have competitive advantage because you have cheap labor force, for instance. Yes. Thomas also says yes, having competitive advantage on exports. Yes, that is absolutely right. I agree. What was mentioned in the podcast? Steve was quite specific about it.
I think he said having a strong manufacturing sector.
Having strong manufacturing sector. Yeah. He literally mentioned exporting raw materials or having a technological advantage, because that's what makes your manufacturing competitive. What role can interest rate play in stabilizing a currency?
Because with higher interest rates, there is a higher demand in that currency. So investors will want to invest their money in bonds, for example, in government bonds in a particular country which has higher interest rates. So their currency will appreciate.
Yes, thank you. That's it. So if a country is running a trade deficit, high interest rates can cause surplus in capital account. That's what Dmitry described, that the investors choose to invest the money with the country with a higher interest rate. And that balances the demand for the currency. Yeah, it's not just the trade account, but also the capital account.
But according to Bilson-Frankel model, it's the opposite. It tells completely opposite thing.
This is a good point, and I think it's a little bit chicken and an egg problem, or rather, we need to ask what is the implication, what implies what. So in Bilson-Frankel, we know the future exchange rate, and we have this investor making the decision where to put the money. where to invest the money. So the independent variable is the exchange rate, and then the interest rate is the explained variable in the model. Well, here the argument is the opposite. You have the interest rate as the independent variable, and that affects the exchange rate, or it affects it directly affects the trade surplus or trade or balance of payments. It directly influences the balance of payments. Mhm. What industry has been affected by high interest rates in Australia, where Steve Keen is from?
The real estate industry, the housing industry.
That would be typical. That would be typical, but not in this case. It was a negative effect, a negative effect on an industry. It was the car industry. The car industry became uncompetitive. Why is it so? Cars are pretty much the same all around the world, and in order to offer something special, something that your competition doesn't have, something that would give you the advantage, you need to invest a lot into research and development, into the technology. But with higher interest rates, it's more expensive to take credit and finance the research and development, which will bring you money in the future. So these high interest rates cut the investments into research, and that, according to Steve Keen, killed the automobile industry in Australia. Does that have any role in the stability of a currency?
Yes, but that
I couldn't really hear you. You said yes, but.
yes, but he said it's more the private debt than the public debt.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. What bubble does Australia have a problem with? Now it's the housing bubble. Yeah, here was the mobility sector, the housing bubble. What is an advantage of having a stable currency? Why would the country prefer to have a stable one?
Because when it's stable, more people buy it and it gets more stable. It's like
I have a different answer. I said more opportunity for long-term contracts with a stable currency.
Yeah, correct. What you said, Oliver, is also correct, but it doesn't explain why is it good. It just you just said that it reinforces itself, which
yeah.
fine, but why is it a good thing, you know? So thank you, Pablo, as well for extending the answer. That's it. Let's move to the Bretton Woods system. Bretton Woods system is the post-war financial or international monetary system that started in 1944. Representatives of the winners of the Second War gathered in New Hampshire, the United States, and they discussed how a future monetary system will look like. It's interesting. I said that the winners of the war met there in the United States, even though it was 1 year before the war ended, but they were already very confident that they will win the war. So there was, speaking of the winners, the Soviet Union was there only as an observer. So the Soviet Union was not or did not participate in this Bretton Woods monetary system. This system lasted from 1940s to 1970s, and it was based on two key elements. One was gold, and the other one was the US dollar, which was pegged to gold. It had gold as its collateral. Uh, there were two types of countries after the Second War, and that was the creditors, which was mainly the United States, because they were not that severely affected by the war. And then there were the debtors, typically Britain, that took a lot of loans from the United States. Also, gold of the European nations were hidden in the United States, in New York, so that the Nazis couldn't have stolen it. So there was goods like ammunition, food, whatever, gas, going from the United States to Europe, and there was gold going from Europe to the United States. So the United States came out of the war as the world's major superpower with the biggest gold reserves. And that's what nominated the United States dollar to be the world's reserve currency number one. And other participating nations' currencies were pegged to the US dollar. There was no foreign exchange of currencies, but a new institution, the International Monetary Fund, was established to supervise this system. The exchange rate were fixed. It could have changed, but only with the permission of the International Monetary Fund. In the beginning of 1970s, the system collapsed. Firstly, President Nixon said on TV in 1971 that the US dollar is no longer bound to gold. So what effectively happened is that the United States defaulted on their debt because they owed European governments and European central banks gold. The US dollar banknotes were only a promise to notes for gold. They were promises to pay gold. But so it means that when dollar was used as a vehicle currency for international trade, it was gold that was used, and the dollar only represented the gold. But then Nixon found out that they ran out of gold. They were unable to keep the collateral in the sufficient volumes, so they just defaulted. And the European governments reacted pretty calmly. They were cool with it. They said, okay, fine, doesn't really matter. Everybody trusts the dollar, so what's the big deal? Yeah, the gold is not that important. That was surprising, but fine, peaceful. Why not? Let's summarize the system. I chose two currencies representing the Bretton Woods system. One is the US dollar, obviously, and this is the Deutsche Mark, or the German mark, is an example of the currency that was bound to the US dollar. Let's start with the dollar. The substance was partially physical because there was a golden collateral to some extent. According to the rules of the Bretton Woods system, a troy ounce of gold cost $31.4, which means that like a cent would be a dollar or something. The monetary authority was the U.S. Central Bank, the Fed. Carrier banknotes, coins, monetary unit the US dollar, transmission system accounting, as with most of the modern currencies, institutions. Here it's important not just the central bank as a regulator, but also the International Monetary Fund as a supervisor of the system. Creation, printing against the gold reserves. So we are talking about the cash form of dollar. Okay, the cash form of dollar had the golden collateral. Still, there was the fiduciary issue, which means credit. It's the system that we have now, that money comes from banks and stuff. It always existed. The difference is that today it's the only thing that we've got. While during the Bretton Woods system, there was at least the primary issue of banknotes and coins, which was bound to gold. Creation, printing against gold reserves. So if you wanted to make more money, you would have to obtain gold before, or you would have to cheat, which is what the United States did and why they had to default. And there was no real termination. But if you run out of gold, you should probably destroy the money. So that could be the money destruction. And what about Deutsche Mark? Here the substance is consensual, and the collateral is the US dollar, which means that the currency board exchange rate system was used when the German Bundesbank, which is the central bank of Germany, wanted to print, or Western Germany, we're talking about Western Germany here. When they wanted to create more money, they would have to do it against their US dollar reserves. They would have to ask the United States to provide them with US dollars, and then they would create the new Deutsche Marks with the exchange rate that was set by the International Monetary Fund. Okay. So creation was through foreign exchange operations. They would have to buy the US dollars. And termination is the same, just reversed. Are there any questions about the Bretton Woods system? Anything you want to ask or comment or?
You mentioned that US defaulted, right? When Nixon announced that US dollar is not bound to gold, but did it really affect US economy? It didn't collapse actually.
No, they didn't. They just defaulted on their debt. They just said that, hey, we are insolvent in terms of gold, which is the real currency, but you know what? Let's pretend that it doesn't matter and that the US dollar is the real currency, and we are not insolvent in terms of US dollar. And it worked. So yeah, there was no real effect on the economy, and even if there was, it would be difficult to notice because there was the oil crisis. So there were crises in the 1970s, but some of them were monetary, some of them were not. The Bretton Woods system did not work well back then because of the fixed exchange rate. there were tendencies for some currencies to strengthen their value, especially the Deutsche Mark and Japanese yen. But some other currencies also should have revalued, like decrease the exchange rate, strengthen their currencies. But nobody wanted to be the first one because they will lose their competitive edge. So there was an alternative solution that gold would revalue, that a troy ounce of gold would represent more dollars, more money, which would not be a problem. It would just mean that there is more money in the world, right? But there was a problem, and that was the problem with the physicalities of the gold and its distribution around the world, because the biggest gold mines were in Indonesia, South Africa. That these countries had, unpopular regimes, I would say, or weird regimes, not really hostile, but well, and also the Soviet Union. The third biggest producer of gold was the Soviet Union. So the countries that joined the Bretton Woods system were waging the Cold War against the Soviet Union. So nobody wanted to revalue the gold. My point is, there were serious errors in the Bretton Woods system causing damages or inefficiencies to the economies. And when a system is problematic and heavily flawed like this, then it's time to replace it with something else. Every system, this is system theory, every system has an inherent flaw, which is very small in the beginning. But as time goes on and there is entropy, the flaw gets bigger and bigger, and ultimately it kills the system, and it will be replaced with another one, which has a different flaw. Every system has a flaw, but it's very small in the beginning. So the Bretton Woods system was fine in the 40s, it was fine in the 50s, when the United States were the real hegemon over the world. But in the 60s, the relative power of the United States went down, and it was no longer possible for the United States to have the only reserve currency. That's it. So yes, they defaulted on the debt that they owed, that was gold, but it doesn't mean that there was an economic disaster in the country. Does it answer your question?
Yes, sure. Thank
Cool.
you.
Anything else? Okay, let me ask you a question. How much gold is there in the world?
It's about 2 football yards, like
Mhm.
2 swimming.
2 swimming pools, 2 football pits, yes. Or you can imagine a house like 4 floors, 5 floors, big like this. So that's how much gold there is in the world, no more. So it's not really much. Gold is scarce, extremely scarce. That's what makes it extremely valuable at the same time. People were talking about El Dorado during the colonization of the Americas, but it's impossible. It's impossible to build a city out of gold because there is not that much gold in the world. Ilya also, yeah, 190 tons. That's pretty much the gold that has ever been mined. 1,000 tons, 190,000 tons. So not 190 tons. That would be too little. So it's not really much, and something like this, like another 150 tons, is supposed to be still in the ground. here you can see countries with the highest reserves. So European Union total would come first, followed by United States. Um, Speaking of individual European countries, Germany has the world's second biggest reserves, and then Italy and France. Uh, China and Russia managed to get a lot of new gold since like 2010 in a reaction on the last crisis because they lost confidence to the US dollar after the Lehman Brothers and the whole crisis. So they managed to get a lot of gold. Not all of the gold, not all of the 190,000 tons is kept by central banks as reserves. Actually, like half of it, like 50% is jewelry. So 90,000 tons is in jewelry. Then 20% is in investment gold for private investors, which means the bullion, the bars, the coins. Central banks have like 17% of all the gold, and more than 12% is used in industry, which is quite important. So gold is an interesting element. It's a great conductor. It's sterile, so you can use it in surgery. Of course, for this reason, gold was used by dentists, right, for your tooth. What do you think? Can all money today be collateralized by gold? Hmm?
I think it would be possible, but it would mean that the price of gold would be increased a lot.
Exactly. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Would it be a problem if the price of gold would have to increase? I calculated it 3,000 times. 3,000 times. So it would skyrocket immediately. What would it lead to? Would it be an issue?
Yeah, the prices of some industry goods which need gold would increase also, but I don't see another problem there.
Maybe the people who already own gold, it would be like in imbalance of wealth because their gold would rise in value so much.
Yes. A right-wing economist would say it's fine, it's fair because they made a good choice. They made a strategic decision by postponing their consumption and investing into gold, so they should be rewarded. Well, all right. Even if uh, we can always question the proportionality of such a reward, but fine. Even uh, if I were in their place, I would be quite scared that somebody would rob me, kill me. I would not want to have golden jewelry on myself or in my mouth as teeth. So there would be a huge instant redistribution of wealth, and I think there would be a huge increase in criminality. Also, as Oliver said, it would cannibalize on the non-monetary usage of the element, which is in the industry. So we have something that is useful. It is used in industry and in medicine, and we would make money out of it instead, so that we cannot use it in the medicine and industry anymore. I think it's barbaric, and also we have the digital gold, which is also scarce and shares a lot of properties with gold, and I'm talking about Bitcoin, of course. There is another problem. Gold is scarce, yes, now, on this planet, on this world, but there's a lot of gold in the outer space. It's some scientists or entrepreneurs are, let's say, dreaming about going to the moon or to other worlds to mine resources like gold. They are already dreaming about it. Imagine gold costed 3,000 times what it costs now. Well, I think that seriously it would speed up the space program, which is cool, but in reverse, it would jeopardize the scarcity of gold. Gold is only valuable because there's so little of it. If you can import it, well, then there is no stability of the prices anymore. So it's not really a good collateral when there can be supply shocks. And it happened. Gold was considered a very scarce, rare money in Europe, and then Americas were founded, and the Spanish ships were bringing a lot of gold from the natives to Europe, and everything inflated. It caused a huge inflation of prices, not just in Spain, but in all Europe. So it's quite dangerous to have a physical collateral. It's like the barrel of powder, it can explode. Plus, you can even create gold artificially. It is in the lab since the 1950s or 40s already. It's just very expensive. You need to destroy the harder or heavier elements in order to produce gold. It's like the nuclear reaction. It doesn't pay off. But if gold was artificially more valuable than the heavier elements, it would start to make sense. So again, there is no fixed scarcity, and I don't really believe that gold is a good collateral. But of course, you can have your own opinions, and there are plenty of economists that believe that yes, gold standard is what we need. Why not? I have a recommendation for you. I started playing Gods Unchained, which is a massive multiplayer online collectible card game on Ethereum blockchain. So imagine Hearthstone, but you actually own the cards, the characters, the digital assets. It's amazing. It's a funny game. It's nice. It's quite polished. And you learn how to use cryptocurrency for real. So if you like computer games, this is a game in which you can earn money. So you can play to earn instead of pay to play or pay to win. So it's for free. And you can buy extra cards from other players using Ethereum. So you just download a MetaMask, which is an extension to your browser, if you use Firefox, Chrome, whatever, Opera, and it's like the Ethereum wallet, which you use for starting running Ethereum-based dApps, decentralized applications. Most of them are not really good, but this one, it's fine. I like it. And if you play it, if you proceed with the game, you get some cards, and you improve them, and then you can sell them. So it's like the real ownership. It's like if you buy the real tangible cards of Magic the Gathering or some other games, and then you can trade it. It's the same thing. It's on the blockchain. Only you have the private keys, meaning that even if your account gets banned, you don't lose your content. You can still sell it or transfer it to another account of yours. They cannot do any errata. Um, Even if they shut the game, you still keep your cards and they keep their collectible value. Plus, anyone else can create any other game with these tokens. Uh, as I said, it runs on the Ethereum blockchain and it allows for token standards. So cards are ERC 721 tokens. It's not like the ERC 20 fungible tokens. These are non-fungible tokens, which means that every single card is individual. Yeah, it's unique. Yeah, if you want to try it, I recommend you to try it. I like it. Probably you would encounter some difficulties, so feel free to contact me and I can help you with the walkthrough. And it's a really nice thing for cryptocurrencies, for the blockchain, for let's say uh, the real world application or playing with the blockchain technology. Commodity money. Commodity money is a currency that actually is something else. So it has a non-monetary use case, like in North America, in the proto-United States or the British colonies back then, certificates for sugar, tobacco, grain, cattle, brandy were used as legal tender. So you were obliged to accept it as a payment. That's what legal tender means. So either certificates or the real, I don't know, cigars would be considered currency, which still works in a prison. Would have a currency like post stamps, package of cigarettes, or just a single cigarette. Commodity money, the substance is physical because it is physical itself. It's the real thing, and you can physically destroy it. Usually, even consume it. Because that's what it's. That's why it is valuable because it is consumable. It has some utility, and that's the way how to destroy it. Creation is natural by creating the thing. There is no monetary authority. Why? Because it's just enough if you find it somewhere or if you create it yourself, you've created money. So carrier is the commodity, or the carrier can be a certificate for the commodity too. Monetary unit is a measure of the commodity, like one cow. Transmission system would be physical transfer, like and handover. Institution, customary law. Um, there is no strict legal regulation usually because it's just self-evident that people can easily understand it. Representative money is paper money that is issued by the government. That is important. That the monetary authority here is the government. That's also the difference between representative money and fiat money. Fiat money is two things created by banks, banking sector, not the government, and it is fiat money is the dominant money system it is the legal tender with forced circulation. Representative money does not have the forced circulation. It's just extra money supply provided by the government. And you can use it, but you don't have to. According to most of the constitutions, government itself cannot create money, so representative money is more like an IOU of the state, or it's something like tax certificate. So it's a discount for paying taxes. It can be, doesn't have to, but it can be collateralized by gold or silver. Like this is the golden yuan. A representative money of the Chinese government, which is basically a yuan nominated contracts, futures contracts for oil that are collateralized by gold. Or it doesn't have to be backed at all, just like fiat. Okay. Most of the countries distribute the representative money by selling it or by paying it to the employees of the state. But an interesting issue was in Maryland, one of the colonies or the U.S. states. In Maryland, the money was distributed to every farmer. So it was something like the universal basic income. The money got into circulation by helicopter money, practically. So, representative money. The substance can be physical or consensual. The monetary authority is the government, and it can be the local government or the national government. Carrier, checks, notes. Monetary name doesn't really matter. Monetary unit. Transmission system, physical transfer. So it's not like accounting. It's just the fact that you have the note. It's like the note is something like cash. Institutions, the government, that's important. Of course, there can be another regulator, but the point here is that this is the power of the government. Collateral can be precious metal, but sometimes there is no, or usually there is none. Creation is discretionary, meaning that the government can decide how much money they can or they want to issue. They are limited by inflation because they can cause inflation if they issue too much of the money. Then people lose their trust for it. And termination, usually taxation. So the money, the representative money gets back to the government, or exchange for collateral in case that is a collateral. What about money in the centrally planned economies? That is interesting. What does central planning mean? What is planned in a centrally planned economy?
It means that there is a central authority, for example, communist party that decides on the production, what will be produced and what will be consumed.
Yes, there is the Communist Party or other party, and there is a planning commission, which is a governmental body, and they decide what will be produced, to whom it will be produced, what price it will be sold at. Also, the commission decides about the distribution of factors of production, meaning who would have the capital all the capital is owned by the government, by the state, and full employment is desired and obligatory. So the government also is the sole employer. What role does money have in this system when there is no price discovery and all the prices are set by the government, including the wages? Well, money in fact is just an accounting unit, I would say. Definitely the substance is consensual because there is no value, no collateral. Um, that's also why the Eastern money from the Eastern world or Eastern Bloc during the Cold War was not accepted in the West. It didn't have any value as the Bretton Woods system or the Western countries would understand. So when Eastern countries wanted to trade with the West, they would need to get the Western currencies like the US dollar. So uh, this is the most important thing. Institution is the planning commission, monetary authority, the government. The government is the single issuer of the currency, and it enters the economy through wages, because the planning commission determines the wages, and then the money goes from the government to the pockets of the people who work for the government, and everyone works for the government because it's the only employer. And spending is determination. That's interesting. So as the worker of the state, you get paid by the state, and then you go and buy something in a shop that is owned by the state. So the money circulates from the state back to the state. Wages, spending, that's it. So it's completely up to the government's deliberation how much money there will be in the economy. And yeah, no price discovery. Well, why did I use the red? Why did I use the red text, red color here? Because it is the dominant money system. Yes. I use green to indicate that this is the scrip, and go red like Bretton Woods or this to represent that, or to show, to indicate that this is the dominant money system that was used in the economy in that particular time. Yeah. So company scrip is a scrip, of course. It's a voucher. It's money that is based by its own production, and some companies can pay their employees in their vouchers as part of the salary. Like these two Czech companies, Baťa and Staropramen, they used to pay their employees in beer and shoes, respectively, in the 1920s and 30s. So the substance of a company's scrip, and we can compare it to the representative money, for instance. The substance is physical because it's a voucher. There's a collateral. There's a product as a collateral. The monetary authority is the company issuing the voucher. Carrier is the voucher, and the monetary unit is the product, like a six-pack of the beers. Transmission system physical transfer, that always applies to vouchers, because just the fact that you keep it makes you the owner in the eyes of the public, let's say. Institution, the company itself. Creation, discretionary, and termination, typically here exchange for collateral. So there are some common concepts, but the main important difference is that the monetary authority here is the company, here it is the government. Local currencies. what's the point of local currencies? That try to solve some problems that are regional. Usually, the point is to cope with the unemployment, deflation, or on the other hand, hyperinflation. Like this is the example of a local currency that was printed at the island of Jersey, near Britain, which is a semi-independent part of the United Kingdom. So in the beginning of the 19th century, in 1816, there was the war against Napoleon, so the Anglo-French War. And during this war against Napoleon, the British government was basically bankrupt, with 80% of all the tax revenue going towards debt payments to the banks, because the banks issued the currency. So there was a problem. There were the factors of production. There was the materials. There were the people. There were the factories, but there was no money to run them, to employ them in the production process. Money was missing because of debt. That's what debt does. If you are overwhelmed with debt, it paralyzes you. Even that works even on the macro level. So these English or this islands in the in the Channel, like Guernsey, Jersey, they issued their own currencies, and they were able to repay their debts. They issued their own currency. 18 months later, they got rid of all their debt. So that was a very effective measure, I would say. Not only did they save them so that they could continue with the production, because it provided liquidity, the new currency provided liquidity, but it even helped them to flourish and to get rid of the debts, to repay them. So some of the local currencies are issued by local governments. It's not a rule, it's not necessary, but usually, or sometimes it is so. And it is in this situation when there is not enough funds from the central government, you need to pay the local officials, or you want to prioritize the consumption of the local goods because you're a local patriot, let's say. So if you use a local currency on the national level, they are something like barriers of trade, something like tariffs. Because when you give local money to the local people, and the money can only be spent in the local stores that accept them, no other stores accept them, it means that the demand will concentrate on the local production. These are three famous proponents of local currencies. Do you recognize any of these three gentlemen?
Thomas Jefferson on the left.
Yeah, that's Thomas Jefferson on the left. Anyone else? No?
On the censor, there's Irving Fisher, right?
Correct. Yes. And the right one? That's Bernard Lietaer. So, Jefferson argued that regions should retain the rights of issuance to oppose the federal power. Alexander Hamilton wanted to create a central bank and a very centralistic Ministry of Finance and a sinking fund to unite the colonies under a strong central government, while Jefferson was on the other, let's say, side of the table. So he thought that there's power in money, and if you want to keep some independence, you need a local currency, not to be that dependent on the central government. Fisher recommended these during the Great Depression for a similar reason, like the Jersey example. During the Great Depression, hundreds, according to some authors, even thousands of local currencies emerged in the United States and in Germany. That were the two countries most severely hit by the economic turmoil. So, according to Fisher, the problems of the economies were that there is not enough money and you cannot add more money because you would create that at the same time. And the economies are already super indebted. Fisher is the author of the debt deflation theory. He says that over-indebtedness causes deflation and that in turn kills the economies. And Lighthizer is one of the fathers of the European monetary integration idea, and he supports this the local currencies now as a fight against that, and also because because of the community aspect of these things. Demurrage local currencies is a very interesting topic. Silvio Gesell was a Swiss economist who was a monetary economist, an expert on monetary issues, and he was a proponent of demurrage. Virgil was a currency used in Austria in the late 1920s during the Depression, and the important thing here was the demurrage. What does it mean? It is an anti-hoarding mechanism. So you need, if you own the currency or if you hold it, you have to pay for holding it. In practical terms, it means that every year or every month you have to restamp the currency and pay something extra for that, which pushes the people to get rid of the money sooner. Something like inflation. Inflation is similar. The good thing about inflation, according to central bankers or some economists, is that it pushes people to spend more money, to be more economically active, to buy more. Yeah, it supports the consumption lifestyle.
Is the
And
point of that
GDP.
to increase the flow of money in the economy? Is that the main
Exactly.
point?
Yes, exactly. That's the main point. Yes, you encourage people to spend money so that the flow of money increases, the velocity of money increases, and it worked. It worked. Well, because this demurrage only affects the coins, the single banknotes, coins, units of money, and not the currency as such. Unlike inflation, there is no inflation. So the prices can be stable. Prices can be stable. Yes. There was like 32,000 of these Virgil coins or banknotes, and they were backed by Austrian shillings, which was the currency back then. And when I said it worked incredibly. Like the velocity of Virgil was 463 a year. So every Virgil changed their owner more often than once a day, while the velocity of shilling was 21. So you took 32,000 shillings, You exchange them for 32,000 burgles, fine. It's like, what's the difference? The difference is that because the velocity is 20 times bigger than in terms of the Austrian shilling, it's like if you have 20 times more money. The effect on the purchasing power consists of the money supply multiplied by the velocity. So if you just speed up the money, it's like you have more money. From the macro perspective, money has this, let's say, quantum feature or character, this quantum character, that at the same time it's the movement and it's like it's the wave and the particle, it's the velocity and the supply at the same time. By the way, what is the velocity of euro right now? Give me a guess. No one knows, no one wants to guess. It's like 1.5, 1.6, 1.8 maybe. Yeah, something like that. The velocity dropped a lot because of financialization. Because a lot of money is used in financial sector. It's like in a virtual casino, it does not enter the real economy. Most of the money never saw real economy, never was used for buying anything real. So all of these piles of money that are only used for financial speculation are decreasing the velocity of the money supply today. What other effect did it have? Did it affect the real economy? Oh yeah, it did. The unemployment dropped by 25%. So it was super effective. Unfortunately, the Austrian government got afraid that it might jeopardize the position of the central financial authorities like the central bank or the Ministry of Finance. So they said the project to be illegal. Yeah. They banned it. There was another project inspired by Sylvia Kesel, and it was Vera in Germany. And it was a demi-reg scrip. It was also a local currency, but in this case, it was not issued by the local government, but by a company. So this was an experiment that happened in Schwannenkirchen in Bavaria. It was a town with the population of 500 people. And most of the people worked in a coal mine that was about to get bankrupt. And Mr. Hebecker, the owner of this coal mine, got the idea that if they can't pay the workers with money because they don't have the money, what if they would pay them with coal? Because they had plenty of it. It was a coal mine. And they created this demi-reg scrip. So it's like the voucher currency, the company scrip that was given to the people. The only difference is that there was the demi-reg element next to it, so that the velocity of money will decrease. And as I said, it started as an experiment in the village of 500 people. And finally, after a couple of years, more than 2.5 million people used it in a broader region, in a broader surrounding of it. The village became free from debt almost immediately. And by the end of 1931, this free economy movement spread throughout Germany, involving more than 2,000 businesses. So it was huge. It was big. I think that it's one of the greatest stories never told in terms of currencies. Let's compare. Virgil has a consensual substance, while Vera has physical, because Vera has this coal as collateral, while Virgil only has Austrian shilling. Monetary authority, that's also an important difference in terms of Virgil. It is the local government. Vera is coal company, or just company. And here the carrier note voucher, the difference between note and the voucher is just that the voucher has a collateral. Monetary unit, Virgil, is worth a shilling, while Vera is worth like a kilogram of coal or something, I don't know. Transmission system, physical in both cases. Institutions, yes, I already mentioned that. Here in both cases, actually, the institutions also were the central banks, because in the end of the day, they made it illegal. And creation here is against the shilling, so you deposit shilling as a collateral, and maybe the local government puts it into a vault, or maybe they use it. I don't really know. And the termination here in both cases is the demurrage. This is important. Yeah, this is super important for these two cases, that the demurrage is the termination system. Here, in terms of Vera, it will be also the exchange for collateral. In Virgil, there is no collateral. Local currencies. Issued by some private entities or foundations. Other examples, like Toronto dollars, they're quite popular. They are reversely exchangeable for Canadian dollar, but the reverse exchange is only for the 90% of the face value, and the 10% goes to charity, a non-profit. And also, the Toronto dollar has an expiration date, and after this date, it is no longer exchangeable, and you can just use it as a souvenir. And the whole value here goes to charity. So it's a charitable program, and also it aims to promote Toronto as the city. Chiemgauer, again in Bavaria, in Germany, it's probably the most used local currency today. It works similarly like the Virgil, but it is electronic. So you don't have to buy the stamps and put it there. The part of the money just disappears, just like that. Bam. Yeah. It can even be fluent. It can like melt like the popsicle all the time, and that doesn't have to be this huge gap like every month or every year. And here we can see that the velocity is 3 times as fast as the euro. Yeah. Jelani, a Polish experiment. Here only the only interesting thing is that it is introduced by an association of entrepreneurs and employers, rather than a single company or a local authority. Juska, it's the currency in Paidabas, in the say separatist region in Spain, but officially the aim of the currency is to promote the emergence of a greener and more human economy, rather than local currency, because independence something. Let's systems. Let's is an abbreviation for local exchange trading system. The first one was introduced in 1982, and it's just a mutual credit system, mutual banking, without any interest. Just people helping each other, and they have institutionalized it a little bit. So there are hundreds, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of groups all around the world, and most groups are quite small. So it's like a community thing. You exchange the favors, and you keep or you keep an accounting ledger or accounting system. It's something like an Excel spreadsheet, and in that you notice debts, who owes to whom. A version of this would be a time script, which works on man hours of work. Here, the idea is that time is precious, and in the fair egalitarian society, an hour of work of everyone is worth the same. So you would use time as the accounting unit. Like Ithaca hour is an example of a time script. It's worth $10, and like the worth of everybody's time. Well, I don't know. I would not really want to work for $10 a day. Somebody maybe would love to. Depends, but here it is the same for everyone. $10. That's it. Take it. It can be used for babysitting, and supposedly it is anti-inflationary. We can compare the community script like this or this with the debt record, and we can see that it's exactly the same thing. The only difference here is that this is more institutionalized, because here is just some habits, some common law, some customs, but in community script you've got an association, and the association usually has a web page and a spreadsheet. So that's it. But it's the same thing basically. Community script and that record, it's the same thing. This is more institutionalized. Monetary unit can be man hour, or it can be a unit back to a national currency. So that is the unit. That's another difference. In that record, sometimes you just remember that somebody owes you a favor. Here, you have a monetary unit counting the value, either in euros or in man hours. And termination, the debt or the money can also be lost when somebody just leaves the association. Of course, the person should, clear their debts before they leave, but what happens if they don't? So that's it. Event money is quite interesting. It's the temporary effect that makes it special. So imagine that you've got a gathering, a fair, exhibition, a camp for children, community-based event, and you use a special currency there. Like once I visited this games, so we pretended to be the cowboys and the American Indians, and spend the weekend playing games like that. And the funny fact was that there was an entrance like $10, and you got you got like 10 times more in the event money. And with this, like $10, which is nothing, like 200 crowns, we could have a lot of fun during the whole weekend, buy a lot of things, and enjoy. And it was possible. Normally we would not answer, how is it possible for $10 to have so much fun? It is possible because you also offer something to the others, right? Part of the games were that you would sell something, some antiques that you created at home, or I don't know, you would wash the dishes or do some fun for the others. So there's a lot of free supply, and it's concentrated. It's a concentrated form of a local currency with a similar effect, we can say. And the velocity here is way higher because everything is a game. So even spending the money is a game. So you spend it more times a day, and that is exactly how you get the purchasing power, because the money turns around a lot and people are willing to offer something and they get paid again. So that's how you can have a huge GDP boost, let's say, in the very concentrated area. It was also used during the Great Depression in Germany. Or not just the Great Depression. This is 1921, so it is against the Great War, against the World War One, when there was a hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic, and here it says only valid in the exhibition uh, 1st to 11th September 1921. So there was an exhibition in the times of a crisis, and you wanted people to have fun. So you created money that was only valid for the 10 days to make them feel rich and to do the magic. Of course, if it was valid after it would lose, the spell would evaporate because there is no more, let's say, supply. For the exhibition, people have prepared or have been preparing for weeks, maybe, and then they sold everything at one place. That's why there was the increase in the momentum of the supply, and that's why you can use more money. So, event money. The monetary authority is the organizer, carrier is the node. The units usually have funny names, why not? Transmission system, again, physical. That applies to most of the scripts, not for the digital ones, but for the nodes. It usually is just a physical transfer. Institution, the organizer. There is no collateral. Usually it can be, but doesn't have to. Creation, selling for profit. So at the entrance of the fair, of the event, you would buy these notes, this money, and termination is to a certain date. Then you can just keep it as a souvenir. Break teeth. That's project-based money that was issued by the church in Middle Ages for building cathedrals. So cathedrals were huge projects, and it took generations sometimes to build a cathedral, and you needed to employ a lot of workforce and capital. It was like the space program of the Middle Ages, yeah, to build the cathedrals. You needed a lot of money, and of course, the church wanted to save the money, so they issued their own money, and that was demurrage. And I told you the demurrage can be used for increasing money supply, but of course, it can also be used for saving money. Yes? Because the issuer, the church, saves the money because of the demurrage. They pay money to the workers, but then the money loses their value, so that they need to keep working for the church. Also, some coupons, certificates, poker chips, all of that can be used as a currency. It is a currency that is designed for a very limited, let's say, area or use case, but you can use it more broadly. Why not? Just when you reach consensus with other people, that's why subway tokens can be used. Some subway tickets can be used in these delights or coffee shops or in Japan. There is a game of luck. Let's say something like something that you play in a casino, and instead of chips like for poker, you have this metal balls that are used in the game. And I heard that these Japanese metal balls are used as a currency outside of the casinos as well, because the game itself is popular. Is Vera a voucher currency? If you compare voucher and Vera, you would find out that they have a lot of similarities, and basically there is no difference. So yes, Vera is a type of a voucher currency, exactly. Here is the voucher, of course. It's just a specific type, or it's a unique thing with a great story, and with the special termination, which is the demurrage next to just the exchange for collateral. Well, next time, an article about a commodity money, or it's a podcast. Maybe it's a podcast. Yes. War and Peace and Cows. So it will be about cows in Africa. Uh, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your attention. Would you like to ask any questions? I have a good news for you, by the way. Before you ask, I wanted to tell you that they returned the mass transfer function to Waves Exchange. So I distributed the points that I owed to you. Some of you got like 16 points at once. I hope it doesn't discourage you from being active in the class. Your turn.
Yeah, I have a question. So, air miles, would they come as some type of currency? Like when you buy airplane tickets and travel, you get to collect air miles and use them for future flights?
Mm-hmm. I would say yes. If you use a very broad definition of currency, that it is just a mathematical expression of value, then definitely. A real currency, or more real, accepted, would it be if they were transferable to other people?
Oh, okay.
I don't think that these air miles usually are transferable to other people. Sometimes they might be, sometimes they don't have to. Again, this is something that would be quite nicely solved by the blockchain, because using the blockchain, everything is transferable by definition.
Yeah.
Just have the ownership. Thank you for the question.
I have a question regarding the exam. Will it be online or do we have to go to school?
It will probably be online, or I'm counting on online. Our school decided that it will not open, even though schools should open, or universities should open since today. There was a very, very surprising shift in the country on Thursday. So, like, the quarantine basically ended out of nowhere. But our school wants to be more consistent than the government, so yeah, I prefer online examinations, and I did online examinations even before.
And is there any set of questions or something we should look at, because I have the exam next week, Monday?
Yeah, well, there was. I uploaded it, but then one of you, wrote answers to that. I'm not saying they were correct answers, but that was not my idea. I wanted to give you the list of the questions so that you can prepare for that. But I thought that you would prepare individually and then not share the answers with each other, because what's the point then? You know. So
Okay, thanks.
any other question?
I have a question. What do you expect about the Bitcoin halving, which is in like 70 days or something?
It will be very soon. I think 22nd of May or 20th of May, something like that. It's very close to the Bitcoin Pizza Day this year. Yeah, well, I'm longing. I'm in a long position, so I expect the price of Bitcoin to go up.
Okay, but you don't think there will be like a problem with the miners if they don't have enough revenue anymore?
Well, it's not the first time it happened. That's the first answer. And the other one is, well, yes, some of them will shut down, probably. Yes. And then they, the system of mining is well thought, because when there is fewer miners, the difficulty decreases, and then it's easier to to mine the block. It's easier to mine the block, so you get the reward more often. Also, even if you only get half of the price or the reward, when the price of Bitcoin doubles, it's the same thing. So
Yeah.
it never can, you never can lose all the miners. It makes no sense. You might lose like 10-15% of the miners probably, and then the difficulty will adjust in a couple of blocks. I think it's in for once in a fortnight or something like that. The difficulty adjusts to the new number of miners, and then new equilibrium would be found. It's a very competitive market. It's basically perfect competition. So, it is a very competitive endeavor or industry. So only those who have some advantage might profit on that. So mining only is profitable for those who have very little, or very small electricity costs. It doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to mine in China or Iceland, where, but even in the Czech Republic, you can mine if you have favorable conditions that you contracted with electricity provider. Possible. You can place your ASICs or rigs to the power plant itself, and so it's physically there. Also, you can utilize the waste heat that the machines produce, and if you could utilize again, you have some kind of advantage. Your costs go down. So that's what mining is about. It's not like just. It's quite complex.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Will we know our results of paperwork in the date of exam or before? I have already corrected 3 of the papers, the first 3 that I received. And once I correct it, then you see the result, at least the number. Ilya asked the question. Thank you.
So one more question. I would like to ask you, what is more profitable, to mine by myself or to use cloud platforms like IQ Mining or NiceHash, something like that?
I don't think that it is profitable to mine at all. You need to be an expert so that it is profitable for you. I don't think there is any way how you can make money on mining. I don't mind. If you are a professional, you know how to set up the machines well. If you know something that the others don't, if you have cheap electricity, then it's fine. But otherwise, I don't think it is profitable. To answer your question, well, these online mining something services are not profitable at all. Mining for yourself or mining in a mining pool, I think that mining in a mining pool is considered to be more profitable. Out of these two options, pool mining is more profitable, but again, it is only profitable for experts. I would definitely not invest into some company that promises to mine for you, because chances are it's a scam. So I wouldn't do it. Scam or very, very risky project. I would rather say scam, to be honest. I don't think that these are legitimate businesses.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it? Okay. Thank you for your question. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for your attention. Have a great day. Bye bye.